Well, you guys have been making a bunch of records together in 2024. Which one was your guys' favorite that you worked on together?
I'm going to defer to him. What do you think? He'll tell you what's good or not.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question because really your job is easier the better he does, right?
No, because the better he does, I have more chances of fucking it up.
Okay.
See, a lot of times people assume that if you have a good mix coming in, it's easy job. No, it's not easy job because if it comes in good, you want to elevate it and you don't want to actually take it down. And a good product is easier to ruin than a bad product. I mean, of course you can ruin a bad product, but when something is good and everybody's happy, like totally happy, how do you make them happier?
Understood.
Okay? You know what I mean? Like, so you got to find the right things. And it's not that he's making it easier on me. He's doing his best work. And the band is happy with it. Now, how can I excite them? They're already stoked about. I mean, what's the level of excitement? You know what I'm saying? It's like if you go now buy a pizza and you love it. You love it, okay? There's a pizza place near it. Can that one top that?
Understood.
You understand what I mean?
I do.
So he's not making my job easier. He's just making his job the best he can. And I'm trying to accommodate what he's giving me to the best that I think works for him. And of course, he can tell me, hey, Maor, I need this or that, or I think it could be better that way. And he's kind of like me. We like options. We like choices. We like to be able to figure out what works. So it's okay if I'll send him like 80 versions. 89.
Okay, so, one
Joking,
thing that
yeah.
I've seen is that the majority of projects that you've worked on this year have gone to Maor.
Yes.
But there's been a couple that haven't. Who's typically making that decision at that point? Is that a producer who's
Always politics.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So it's usually rarely the producer because they know better than to argue with the mixer because usually they trust the mixer. It's always like, well, we want a particular name on a project or we want a thing, but there's ways you can mitigate that as a mixer. You come in and put it in your agreement. This is how I get my sound, and it involves him. So it's in my agreement. You guys can hire whatever mixer or mastering engineer you want, but you're going to pay for it's going to be part of the fee. So,
So you're getting paid even if you don't master the song?
No, he's not. But when somebody comes to you, and this is something he's taught me, Maor's been a great mentor. He's helped me learn a lot of things that I think are not obvious to mixers because we work in bubbles, we're friends with each other, but the difference is you're a mixer, you work in your own thing, or a mastering engineer. What you don't do is you don't work with 400 million other mixers and get to take the average thing and, extrapolate all that data and go back to one individual person and say, hey, your idol does this, this, and this, and that, and you're doing this, and why are you doing that? If you're trying to do this, but this is the fastest way to get there, you can get that kind of feedback. So having a relationship between the mixing and mastering engineer is worth so much more than just a fee, as far as I'm concerned. So one thing he taught me is that if you go in advance and you know what you want, and you begin the negotiation with the artist, so you're like, look, this is how I get my sound. This is the team, okay? You want my sound, that's why you hired me. This is how we get that. And if you break that, that's cool, if you have your preference, but I will always go and I will always fight for it. Because the reason that I go to Maor is because I view our relationship as invaluable, meaning like he makes me way better at what I am than what I'm due. He helps take the work that I do and guide me in the direction I need to go when I need to go in that direction, and helps me kind of zoom out and see things that I'm not doing. So
do you ever get a master back and you go, fuck, I should have done that?
Not anymore. Like, I need him to do it. And every time it goes to somebody else, I'm usually pissed about it because it never turns out as good.
So is there some time when you're working on a mix and you get far into a mix and you're like, oh, I wish that it was a little bit more like this, but I know that Maor is going to do that, so it's all good?
No.
Okay.
I used to think like that, but some people like to leave the mastering engineer room for interpretation. But I'm just like, look, here's the best I could do, Rick. This is it. This is where I can take this set of inputs, because as a mixer, you can't control what you're given, and sometimes those set of inputs can only get you a B+ on that given day, or maybe you can get an A-, but other times you could get an A+, if you're given the right inputs. So I always take it as far as I can take it. And at that point, I'm like, here you go. I can't do anything else with it. I don't know what to do, or else I would have did it. And that's where he comes in, because he always finds the next level to take it to elevate the work, to make it come to life. And he can see the things that I can't because I've lost the perspective, or I've lost the ability to focus on the right thing, or you know what I mean? So
Very cool. So, when it comes to getting work from Joel, does he ever send you mixes in the middle of the night, or is that a pretty consistent schedule?
Well, here's an interesting thing. Joel is one of those mixers that you can hear progress. For example, when you had the API, okay, he had a certain sound. Then even before the API, when you had the summing, and then from API to the SSL. So you constantly hear him, we would call the word progress, but it's also change, okay? And in time, there's aesthetics you gravitate to, okay? So he's always taking his best step with what he has, okay? Now, frankly, I like the fact that he's doing that, because I think that the more he's doing that, he has an identification to what he's doing. Think of it as an identity as a musician. He has an identity as a mixer. Now, a lot of legacy and legendary mixers are like that because they had a huge career to build themselves and sound like that. Now, there are mixers today that are doing that too, but we're now in a world where everything is in our hands. I mean, the sky is the limit. You can have now 3,000 plugins, right? You can have anything in the world. And what I like is that Joel is not afraid to make mistakes and not afraid to get like, dude, was that bad? Yeah, okay, I'll know next time. Or, dude, what do you think? I think it's actually good. He's not afraid to be in that stage. I'm like that too, because what do we have to lose? I mean, we did a mistake. We're learning from it, okay?
Absolutely.
Ego is one thing and confidence is the other. And I think insecurity is sometimes the ticket. Because if you come with insecurity, you come with a good approach to, hey, I'm not sure this will work, but let's try to explore it. The confidence should be in the journey, not in the result. Okay?
So who ends up with the most recalls? Do you tend to hit him up for changes, or do you tend to call him and tell him to change something about the mix?
You never ask him to do recalls. He'll destroy. He'll be like, the mixer needs to fix it.
So it's him who needs to fix it.
But it happens sometimes, usually because of artist negligence, because something is approved, but then it's not. And I don't want to name some of our favorite artists that we work on that have this problem. We're like, dude, I've been listening to this for 3 weeks, and there's this breath on this one word. It just needs to come down a little bit. Can you just rerun the master?
Yeah, that's not a mastering thing, Joel.
Exactly. But, you're talking to artists, but
I know. I'm talking shit.
The times that I will go back to Joe is that it's because it's not a mix decision, it was a production decision that will hinder the mix result. And what I mean is, yes, the producer is right. Yes, the artist is right. Yes, Joel had to be right. But when it came to radio or streaming, it started to sound weird. And it's because we knew it's going to happen there, but they they kind of needed what we call a rubber stamp to prove that. So we did it as is, and then when it comes out, they're like, oh, now we hear, which we had mentioned previously. And then they're like, okay, next time we're not going to bug this guy about doing that. But sometimes they have to hear it from the mastering guy because he's next in line and he's aware.
Is it because of your job title?
No, it's because I used to be a broadcasting engineer, and I've did that for a lot of years. And certain things, I know how they'll translate, and I'll warn him, and I'll say, look, you want it like this? We'll do it like this, but just be aware it's going to translate like this. And if they come back to you, this is the solution.
So if you could change the job title of mastering engineer to any other engineer, what would it be?
I would just say, at the end of the day, any one of us is a consultant. We all have input. Now, that input is dependent on who wants to hear it. Joel can say to the client, hey man, your bass is not that good. Maybe you should kind of fix that track. They can say, no. Okay, at least he told them what he heard and thought, which is relevant. Okay, now, if you come with the approach that, oh, everybody has opinions, yes, that's true. But sometimes we need to be sober about it. And I learned that from one of the biggest guitar players in the world. Sober criticism is very important. Sometimes I go on forums and I see people saying, oh, you know, the mixing guy or the mastering guy said to do that. Their response is, oh, you should fire him. Like, bro, why should you fire him? He gave you an opinion. He might be right or might be wrong. If you fire a person because he wants for your good and at least he gave you an opinion, I don't think it's the right thing. Now, that being said, you don't want to overstep people. I get it. But people are very quick with responses. And I think a lot of times their responses is not based on what's there, but more about what's here.
Do you fire your clients ever?
What?
Do you ever fire your clients?
I never fire anybody because I believe that everybody has taste, opinions. You know, sometimes you don't match with them. That can happen.
Yeah.
I think that the first thing you need to do before such a thing happens is try to understand them. It's their record. They might make a big mistake, but at the end of the day, you have other records to do. For them, that's their mountain of hope. If I get to a point where I do something and I think it's not good, I'll say, look, I'll do this. I don't think it's that good, but I'll do it because you requested. Sometimes they come back saying, you know what? Now we hear it, we understand, let's go to the first one. Other times they'll say, we love it. And you'll be like, okay, well, at least I made you happy.
Very cool.
You know, we have to look at this profession as, yes, it's a service providing, but you can also be very personal.
Yeah, and ultimately, communication is key. You know,
Always.
A lot of times, all we have is our words or texts to try and, you know, tell someone miles and states away about what we're hoping to accomplish with vague, you know, niceties like warm and fucking glow and shit, you know? So,
Glow.
you know, it's interesting how you said earlier, taste change, times change, trends change.
Yeah.
You know, and you guys as a team have done a very good job over the past year, because I will say that 2024 was a year that started off very robotic in heavy music, and it got much more natural as the year went on. And there's this trend happening where people are saying, use analog gear, record the fucking drums, you know, and you guys are stepping up to the plate and turning out work that, you know, people want to listen to because it does a good job of living in this new world, but also, you know, relating to the kids who have been involved in URM and stuff like that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's important. I mean, sometimes I think about, and I'll choose my words carefully here. I think about the art we're making, like our generation, and I think about the art that came before us. And if you've spent any amount of time with those people, those great engineers that we grew up, you realize how good they were. And not just good, but like, I sometimes I just feel like we're not worthy and we're dropping the ball. And Brian, I wake up, instead of thinking about short term, I try to think what I've learned from being in the room with people like that was try to think timeless. And I don't know, I just feel like we're fucking it up every day. And like I want to not be that guy as much as possible.
Well, you're not. You're killing it, you know? And one thing that I've learned about those guys, those greats, you know, women and men who have made records for these past decades before us, is, you know, there was something very different that started with our generation. And what they had to do is they committed.
Yeah.
You know, they had to commit to a sound. If they wanted a great kick drum sound on that record, they had to make sure that they recorded a great kick drum sound on that record. And, you know, I think it's very wonderful to see you guys commit towards working with each other to try and make the best art that you two can as individuals, but also as a team.
That's a good point. And I'll say that, and Maor and I talk about this sometimes in private. You know, people talk about AI and is it going to take over the industry and all that stuff. And I think it may or may not, but to some degree the answer is as long as we decide to collaborate, we have a music industry. As long as we decide to say, hey, I don't need to take every dollar out of the pot. I want to go work with my friend here and hire my friend here. And because great art is really made by teams of people. Because, you know, I can master, I'm good at it, I've got good credit. I'm not as good as he is. So why would I try to master my own stuff? Because it's holding me back. I need him. Or Rick, you're a much better engineer than I am. Why would I hang a microphone if we're going to do a drum sample library when I could hire you to do it? Because you know every single microphone by heart and what capsule's in it and what the wire.
He knows the serial numbers.
Dude, I know he knows the serial numbers and like what record it was used on and where. Like, dude, why would you not? Because it's just, I think younger people coming up should really think about collaboration, because people think about it's a zero-sum game. It's $1 out of my pocket if somebody else gets the mix gig, or it's not. The biggest, baddest producers, they work on teams. And as you go up, you see that. They hire teams of great people.
Well, no, and I've always felt, one of my mentors way back in the day was a guy named Brian Siskey, and he had this whole thought with it, which is that teams win the World Series.
I'm lucky that I got to work with a lot of producers that I grew up listening to. I worked on records with people who, when I was younger, I looked up, and even, my first landing in America, I worked for Sylvia Massey. I was one of her staff engineers, right? And in time, working with bands like Yes or Faith No More or Meatloaf or a ton of other bands, I got to work with these producers, these mixers, these songwriters, collaborators. And what's interesting is, back in the day, it was like do or die. It was like the bands would come in. Some of these big bands actually ran out of budget, and they were owing the record labels extreme amount of money. And the records sometimes would fail for the first few months. You're like, oh my God, they just lost $1 million, right? And then 5 months in, boom, a single comes out, and and I hear those stories. Like, I would sit in sessions with these guys who would tell me, all these legendary stories, and you once you work with these guys, the door opens. They start talking, they start telling you stories, and I still have that mentality. Like, to me, the mentality is, I work on a record. Call me, tell me if I messed up. Call me, tell me if you like it.
Every time.
Call me, tell me if it works. I want to know. I'm not just here, I sent it off, no news is good news. No, we worked hard.
I'm going to call you and tell you used the wrong kitchen appliance on the mix.
He's making fun of my oven, of my
Should've
stove.
Should have used the Mongol.
Yeah, this one needed the roaster, my guy.
I'm the only one who owns the mangal.
You've told me that like 8 times.
Well, you see, it's true.
Yeah, except you're going to make one for me anyways.
Well, my dudes, I really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us, and I'm very proud of the work that you guys are doing.
Always a pleasure.
Can I say something?
Yes.
2 things. 1, I'm very proud of what you've done, because you came out as an engineer. I met you years ago. We've been in touch for a long time. You were an engineer. You still. But you came from engineering, not dabbling, not playing around. Actually, the guy, like I said, the serial number of which mic was what. And we used to have these geek talks, nerd talks.
Oh, yeah, you came and hung out while I was sleeping on the floor at studios.
And we would hang out,
Yeah.
and you took your passion and put it in something that people can bring into their DAW. Like, you doing plugins was the right choice, because you're not a guy who just opened a plugin company. You're an actual engineer who records, who does stuff, and now wants to translate that passion into people's DAW, people's production.
It makes a difference.
And I think that's a big respect thing. And I've heard your stuff, and I did write some presets for you. And I gotta tell you, I don't use many in-the-box EQs, but I do use the Matrix Hello 432 Soundtech, because I know the real shit too. So,
well, thank you. Thank you very much. That's very high praise, and coming from you means the world.
If you're watching at home, please check out some of the great new Metric Halo releases here that they've done with Make Believe.
Well, and let's take this opportunity. Let me look dead in the camera. Joel has a company called Drum Forge, and we went into the depths of New Jersey.
We did.
To make something so incredibly cool for you guys together that I think it's worth talking about. You want to tell them?
Sure. We're like who are some of the producers that are known for drums? The greatest ones of all time. You have like Daniel Bergstrand in metal, David Ben Death in rock. And David went around and he was looking for a company that was crazy enough to do this insane vision to make the most over-the-top drum pack ever, period. So we're like, all right, David, we're going to need the most over-the-top collection of drums. We're going to need the most over-the-top studio. We're going to need the best engineering team on the planet. Who are those people? How do we assemble it? So we brought Rick and his team in to engineer. We went to Iwi Sound in New Jersey, recorded on one of the few remaining operational Focusrite consoles with all OG original gear, not the stuff they make emulations of and clones of now, but like the real stuff that, they used back in the day, still operational, up intact. And we recorded one of the sickest collections of drums that I would say is almost impossible to get. I don't want to talk about it all day, and that's going to be coming out later this year. And it's the most ambitious drum pack, and for many, many reasons, so proud of what we've created as a team, and it's phenomenal.
I'll just say this, as someone, who loves what URM does and all the community there, and it feels like I have a finger on the pulse of what they're looking for. This is very exciting because there's things in there that you guys are absolutely going to love, but there's also some things in there that I think are incredibly creative. There's things like the Blamier toms. The Blamier toms are Hal Blaine and Karen Carpenter's toms. They tracked down an original set of these fiberglass hand-spun toms, and you wouldn't think that Karen Carpenter's tom drums would be amazing for a thrash metal song, but those little small toms cut the fuck through like nothing else. They're great.
Is that the most recorded drum set in history?
Yeah, Hal Blaine's, yeah.
There you go. Well, we got it.
Yep. Well, hey, you guys have a wonderful day at home, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.